Okay, I think I'll put the title Reluctant Mothers or something like that. And I'll try to keep this short. This is something that happens not frequently, but it does happen. I'd say the 7 or 8 years I've had sheep, it's happened a couple, 2, 3 times. It typically happens to new mothers, okay, although sometimes it could happen to one that's had babies before. But the new mothers, you got to keep an eye on them for this. But for whatever reason, they'll have a baby, 1 or 2, whatever it is, and they'll lick the baby clean and get everything set up. But as soon as the baby goes to nurse, the mother gets milk, the mother backs away. Okay? And that baby will spend all day chasing the mother around, and she spends all day backing away from it, not nursing it. And it's typically the, let's say if there was, you know, a painful delivery, or if it was difficult, and now this thing's going to go and lock onto her teats, which are sore because they're full up and all this kind of thing. And so the new mothers, they don't understand what's going on. This baby's trying to attack them, kind of thing. And so what'll happen is you have a window, a limited window to get that baby hooked up with its mother, and you have to do it pretty quick. You know, within a day or two. I'll give you an example. I've got one out there. The mother had a single baby. Cleaned it up. She's close to it. Some will abandon a baby, but I have not had that problem specifically. But not this. She's joined up with the baby, but she will not let it nurse. And what it is, you can tell she's really swollen up, and it's painful. So what I have to do is I catch the mother, chain her up, put her up against a panel or a post, and then grab the baby, put the baby on her. And typically the baby will nurse, and you do this, you might have to do this first day, the second day, usually by the 3rd day they'll lock on. Or the mother will no longer, she'll get the idea of what's going on. It's her baby, you've got her milk down and all this stuff. Typically, I've done it before where I said, well, I'm going to watch and see what happens. Maybe they'll finally get it. And that's, you don't have time for that with a newborn. You've got to do something that first day. You got to stop that mother and put that baby on it, so he gets the first milk. They call it the first milk. That's the one that has the colostrum, which you could also buy colostrum. This is one of the brands I use. But what happens? It's extremely important. I don't care what the animal is, calves, sheep, goats. That baby's got to get that first milk. Okay. And I actually had one that I didn't quite understand this way back when, and so the baby did not get the first milk, and I just fed it regular replacement milk, and it died. It didn't make it. That first milk has all the nutrients, the aminos, builds the immunity system. Without that, they ain't gonna make it. Rarely does one make it. So it's very important that the newborn gets that first milk. So what I'll typically do is if I see there's a problem in the first day, first few hours or whatever, I'll take the time, lock the mother up, put the baby on to make sure it got that first milk. All right. And even tip on the ones where there's no issues, I still stand around and make sure, okay, let's make sure they're locking on in that first day. I want to see in that first day that, okay, I've seen that baby on its mother, it was successfully getting milk, okay, it got the first milk, we're good to go. I would just, you know, watch it every day. But in this particular one, she had the single, it was painful, she wouldn't let him nurse. I tied her up, put the baby on her, made sure that the teats, you know, actually have to milk the teats out. You by hand sometimes to get waxed up, where the baby can't get any, the milk isn't flowing. That's something else you have to be concerned of. So the first day I was born, I put him on. He got a little bit of milk. That night, did it again. That was Friday night. Got the rest of the milk. So I know he's got his first milk. The second day, he's still not hooked on with her. She's still in pain, you know, and they're running around avoiding each other. She's avoiding him. So I had a bunch of stuff to do yesterday, so I had to take cows to sell. So I locked her up before I went, put the baby on, so I got a good meal. Came back in the afternoon, and this time when I locked the mother up, she was still really expanded, her bag, teats and all that. So still painful. So even when the baby was on her, he wasn't getting all of it. So what I did is I put the baby back on her, got him fed till he was just stuffed. And then I went and hand milked her and just milked her out. It took about 30 minutes and just emptied her. And what that did, the goal there was to get enough pressure off and maybe to get the pain to subside a little bit. And so I did that, went to work. Now, came back 4, 5, 6 hours later, and here's the mom, here's the baby laying down. Finally they get up. Typically that's when the baby's going to go and try to nurse. And so she seemed a little reluctant, and then he locks on and she stayed there. Okay. So I'll make sure this morning, I gotta make sure they're still, you know, working together. Make sure she's not blown out again. But usually it takes, like I said, a 2-3 day deal of that. Very labor intensive. And you gotta be on, you gotta be looking all the time at these two. That's when calving, although I really haven't had this problem with calves, but with sheep and goats, those first few days can be stressful, a lot of labor. You have to have some gear and some experience to get the little ones on track. Because a little thing like that where a mother can just get so full of milk and painful, where the baby doesn't get fed. And what would happen, let's say the first day I'm waiting around to see if the baby will lock on. Say, well, let's see if the mother figures it out. Well, by the second day, that baby's worn out. He has not been fed. Even if he got fed once, he's pretty much worn out energy-wise on day 2. So now, if you don't jump in there quickly and get him started, he's not going to have energy to even suck the milk once you put him on. So that's why it's so important to get him started within that first 24 hours, hooked up with their mom. I'm trying to think of something I missed here, but typically, like I said, 2 or 3 days, they'll pretty much hook up, and you got to consider the mother's pain. You know, if her teats are really painful, you got to figure out a way around that. Like I said, if you get them milked out, you get the baby lock on where it's a lot less painful for her. I've had to actually take 7 or 8 days trying to get the mother to hook up. I've had mothers trying to clobber their babies, and you're supposed to feed them 6 times a day. I only did 3 because I just don't have the time for that. So I would go out there 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, then when I got back from work. And finally, after about 7 or 8 days, got the baby to lock on, or the mother to hook up with her baby. And that actually turned out to be an extremely good mother after that. So it's when you have a first-time mother that kind of has an issue like that, you may tolerate it, you know, for the first baby, and then see how they do on the second one. Some guys will just flat sell them out after that. So any trouble whatsoever, and I get that too, because I have 30 sheep out there, I think 30-something sheep. If you had 300 and a 10% were doing this, you couldn't hire enough people with experience to take care of it. You'd have babies dying all over the place. So a lot of times, bigger operations, when they get trouble like that, they move them out. You're not going to, just because it's so labor intensive. The other aspect is I've also had ones that, for whatever reason, were not going to accept their baby. And you can tell. They want no part of it. So you had to put that baby on a bottle. Once again, 2 months labor intensive of bottle feeding this baby. And on top of that, about the most expensive supplement you can buy is replacement milk. You're going to spend hundreds of dollars. You're going to spend $100 feeding that baby, easily. And his value at the end may only be, you know, $150. So you really have to consider that. But sometimes that's what happens. Then you end up with an animal that thinks you're his mother, and you might get a connection with this thing, and it becomes a pet, and you can't sell it. You know, I got a whole bunch of those out there. But I always keep on hand. This is colostrum, and then I also have a big tub of replacement milk. Then we buy these are nipples these go in a regular water bottle. There's all kinds of directions how to mix it. But what you have to do is, I've actually gone and if it was questionable, wintertime, very cold or something, and I had babies on the ground, and I wasn't sure, I'd give them some of this colostrum just to kind of, sometimes people say, well, if you do that, then they won't go to the mother. Not necessarily, but put something in them. If you've got a baby that you say, uh-oh, I thought this one was getting first milk, day 2, he looks like crap, uh-oh, I can't fool around, you know, boom, I go to the bottle and get them started on that. Meanwhile, still trying to put them with a mother, still trying to get them with a mother. And so the ultimate goal is you've got to get them to lock on to the mother Otherwise, the labor, it's too labor intensive. It's the cost of milk is expensive, but sometimes that's the only option you have. So I'll show in the video where I got, basically I'm hanging on to this mom and allowing the baby to feed. This is like when you really want to have a little barn or something like that. Another thing you'll do too is if you have a small pen, mine are all together, and they call them tubs. But you put a small pen where if you're having a little bit of trouble getting them to hook together, you put the mom and the baby in a small pen. So if she's going to avoid them, she can't run off very far. Because if you had a quarter acre of a pen and the mom just keeps moving away from this baby, she's just wearing the energy out of this kid. Whereas if she's in a small pen, she couldn't do so much. You get less ground, kind of thing. Not sure if I'm making a lot of sense, but basically it's just, I've got one out there that, anyways, I went at last night, she's locked on. Pretty much. I had a couple of reluctant mothers. I had 2 that I had to hang on to get them started, which I haven't had to do that in a while. But this one was a first-time mother, and you could tell she was just sore. So by restraining her, putting the baby on her, getting her milked out, getting the milk quantity down where it's less painful for her, and now the baby, after you've set the baby up 3, 4, 5, 6 times, he knows what's going on. He knows what he's looking for. And so it's just one of those things. You make sure they get the first milk. You got to get them locked up, locked together, locked on, and that's pretty much your goal at lambing time. I'll go out there today and see if there's anything else born. First thing I'm looking at is, okay, has it been milked? Is it getting that first milk? If they do it on their own, they're good. If you have a baby that's chasing his mom around, she's not feeding him. Anyhow, I'll shut up and I'm going to have to do a second video. I'll put the video after this.